Hey y'all, welcome to Killer Queens, a true crime podcast. I'm your host, Torella, and like most millennials, I've always had an obsession with true crime. On KQ, you'll find light true crime stories, millennial hypes and gripes, some adult language, and maybe a special guest here and there. Just like a 90s sleepover, we're just a couple BFFs hanging out, so gather round and let's launch right into it. Okay, you guys, welcome back to another episode. So I'm Torella, and I have had lots of requests to cover the Matthew Perry case. Of course, with this podcast being lighter true crime with heavy leaning on nostalgia from like 90s, early 2000s, one of our kind of things is quoting the show Friends. And Matthew Perry obviously was a huge part of that. So for millennials, especially, we're getting to the age where, unfortunately, some of our childhood heroes and, celebrities and things like that we really, really loved are beginning to pass away. And one of those is Matthew Perry. And he passed away in October of 2023. So we're coming up on a year. And at the time, I remember people dropping it in our Facebook group. Matthew Perry passed away. And the first thing that I thought was, I hope this had nothing to do with addiction, because I felt like people would be really judgmental, because obviously he's had a very open struggle with addiction, and sobriety was something that he had to work really, really hard on. And I believe that he did. We now know what happened. We now know the involvement of doctors and people who have taken an oath to heal and do no harm, what they've done to somebody who had a well-documented history of addiction publicly. He released a book about it. He even talked about not wanting his legacy to be being Chandler on Friends, which he was proud of that. But that's not what he wanted his legacy to be. He wanted his legacy to be helping people and overcoming addiction and helping other people overcome addiction. We are going to discuss where the case sits right now. Nobody has gone to court yet as of time of this recording. I believe at this point, some of them have been arraigned and pled guilty and things like that. But there's not, we don't have a trial of anybody yet. What we do have are the indictments. They have been released. And there is a press conference that several people involved in the investigation took part in, including the U.S. attorney. I keep wanting to call him Eric Estrada. Not so, it's Martin Estrada. He was part of that. DEA agents were part of that. So, I'm sorry, the DEA administrator and Milgram. So you can watch that as well if you want to hear all of this from them. But we do have the indictment. So what I was going to do is kind of read through some of these things and give you a complete timeline. What really breaks my heart about this is he passed away on October 28th, 2023. And really, the beginning of his dealings with these people in the indictments began on September the 30th. That's so fast. It's a matter of a month. And honestly, not all the way. A month, not quite. So it is just really heartbreaking. And I am glad that the authorities are taking this seriously. I do think that it would not be taken as seriously if he were not a celebrity, but I'm glad that we're starting somewhere. So let's get to it. So I've got here from the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Central District of California. It says a licensed physician and an alleged San Fernando Valley drug dealer were arrested today in connection with the death of actor Matthew Perry, who suffered a fatal ketamine overdose in October 2023. I got my introduction to ketamine, if you will, through the Take Care of Maya case. Obviously, there's a documentary about that on Netflix, not about the court case because the Netflix documentary released before it went to court. She did win her case in court against Johns Hopkins, All Children's Hospital, JHatch, if you nasty. And it's in the appeals process right now. There's a whole bunch of drama with that. One of her attorneys has withdrawn, which is really sad because he was a fantastic attorney for her case. But anyway, it's in the appeals process and all of those things. But she won a pretty large settlement. But she has a complex regional pain syndrome, CRPS, and went through a lot of ketamine treatments as a child. Which is ultimately what got her taken away from her parents and in the custody of JHatch, where mayhem ensued. And again, she won that case in court. That was a very interesting trial to watch. I watched the whole thing start to finish. Judge Carroll, shout out. You're one of my favorites. He's a fantastic judge. But that's where I learned most of what I know about ketamine. It can absolutely have a place in medical treatment from what it sounds like, but it's very serious. Patients need to be monitored on it. There are obviously safe doses and not safe doses and things like that. And what happened with Matthew Perry is horrific because these doctors, look, I expect the ketamine queen, a drug dealer in North Hollywood, I expect her to be driven by greed. I sure do. But Dr. Placentia, I don't know how you say his last name, Placencia, and Dr. Chavez, do better. Y'all do better. All of you do better. But these are doctors. They fucking knew better. So anyway, it does have a place in medicine, so it seems, but you can't do what these people did. I mean, it's terrible. The defendants are charged in an 18-count superseding indictment returned on Wednesday with distributing ketamine to Perry during the final weeks of the actor's life. So we have Jasveen Sangha, 41, who goes by the ketamine queen, which, like, does everybody know you go by that? It's kind of like holding like a, look at me, I sell ketamine. And Dr. Salvador Placentia, 42, aka Dr. P of Santa Monica. And that's what they refer to them as in the indictments. Sangha and Placentia, you know what? I'm going to say ketamine queen and Dr. P because, I don't do words, are charged with 1 count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine. Dr. P also is charged with 1 count of maintaining a drug-involved premises, 1 count of possession with intent to distribute methamphetamine. Well, I'm sorry, Sangha is, I'm not talking about Dr. P right now, I'm talking about ketamine queen. She was charged with intent to distribute methamphetamine, 1 count of possession with intent to distribute ketamine, and 5 counts of distribution of ketamine. The superseding indictment alleges that ketamine queen's distribution of ketamine on October 24, 2023 caused Perry's death. Dr. P is charged with 7 counts of distribution of ketamine and 2 counts of altering and falsifying documents or records related to the federal investigation. Well, that's not good. So now we have a quote from U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada. These defendants cared more about profiting off of Mr. Perry than caring for his well-being. Drug dealers selling dangerous substances are gambling with other people's lives over greed. This case, along with our many other prosecutions of drug dealers who cause death, send a clear message that we will hold drug dealers accountable for the deaths they cause. Bringing these individuals to justice for their role in the untimely death of Mr. Perry required coordination and hard work by a number of people. I want to thank LAPD detectives and our federal partners for their patience and dedication. And this was the LAPD Chief Dominic Choi. As the boots on the ground in our communities, on a daily basis, LAPD officers witness firsthand the harm that these narcotics can cause. So I'm pleased that our collective efforts have led to the arrest of these individuals. Now we are on to the DEA Administrator, Ann Milgram. And again, you can watch their entire statement. It's literally all over the internet. So these are just quotes from it. Today, we announced charges brought against the 5 individuals who together are responsible for the death of Matthew Perry. We allege each of the defendants played a key role in his death by falsely prescribing, selling, or injecting the ketamine that caused Matthew Perry's tragic death. Matthew Perry's journey began with unscrupulous doctors who abused their position of trust because they saw him as a payday, to street dealers who gave him ketamine in unmarked vials. Every day, the DEA works tirelessly with our federal, state, and local partners to protect the public and to hold accountable those that distribute deadly and dangerous drugs, whether they are local drug traffickers or doctors who violate their sworn oath to care for patients. So, in addition to Dr. P and Ketamine Queen, we have 3 other defendants. We have Eric Fleming, 54, of Hawthorne, who pleaded guilty on August 8th to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine and 1 count of distribution of ketamine. I did the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable there, resulting in death. Fleming admitted in court documents that he distributed the ketamine that killed Perry. He further admitted to obtaining the ketamine from his source, which is Ketamine Queen, and to distributing 50 vials of ketamine to Perry's live-in assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa. Dang, I knew that, and that was, reading is hard, you guys. Kenneth Iwamasa, half of them 4 days before Perry's death. That's 25 just 4 days before he died. Kenneth Iwamasa, 59, of Toluca Lake, who conspired with the Ketamine Queen, Eric Fleming, and Dr. P to illegally obtain ketamine and distribute it to Perry. He pleaded guilty on August 7th to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine causing death, admitted to repeatedly injecting Perry with ketamine without medical training, including performing multiple injections on Perry just on October 28th, 2023, the day that he died. Dr. Mark Chavez, 54, of San Diego, a physician who has agreed to plead guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute ketamine. Chavez admitted in his plea agreement to selling ketamine to Dr. P, including ketamine that he had diverted from his former ketamine clinic. And this was, just wait. Chavez also obtained additional ketamine to transfer to Dr. P by making false representations to a wholesale ketamine distributor and by submitting a fraudulent prescription in the name of a former patient without that patient's knowledge or consent. So let's get to some of these indictments. So we are going to do Dr. Mark Chavez first. He and Dr. P, I think, are the most egregious in this situation because they're doctors. So defendant Mark Chavez was a medical doctor licensed to practice in the state of California. Obviously, he knew that ketamine was a controlled substance. He had to apply for a DEA license number. Doctors have to do that. So it says here, due to medical risks associated with ketamine, defendant Chavez understood it was necessary for a healthcare provider to monitor a patient who had just been given ketamine, and during that observation period, have access to certain life-saving equipment like a defibrillator, a supply of supplemental oxygen, equipment to monitor the patient's heart rate and breathing, and medication to ensure patient safety, including medication to control unsafe spikes in blood pressure. Defendant Chavez was aware that selling vials of ketamine to a patient for self-administration was illegal, far outside the scope of professional practice and without a legitimate medical purpose. Defendant Chavez similarly knew it was illegal to obtain a prescription of a controlled substance in the name of a patient without the patient's knowledge or consent. On or about July 17, 2023, defendant Chavez submitted a fraudulent prescription to Pharmacy One to obtain 30 200 milligram ketamine lozenges in the name of patient VB without this patient's knowledge or consent. Pharmacy One subsequently filled that prescription and sent defendant Chavez 10 200 milligram ketamine lozenges in VB's name. All right, so object of the conspiracy. Now we're getting to how this has to deal with Matthew Perry. Beginning on a date unknown but no later than September 2023 and continuing at least on or about October 28, 2023, Dr. Chavez conspired with others known and unknown to knowingly and intentionally distribute ketamine. Number 1, co-conspirator 1 would contact defendant Chavez about purchasing ketamine from Dr. Chavez so that this person could sell the ketamine to Matthew Perry. Then Dr. Chavez would communicate with co-conspirator 1 about the type and quantity of ketamine that the defendant had available for sale, what the price point was, all of that, how much they were going to charge him. Y'all are going to die when you find out how much they paid for this ketamine and what they charged Matthew Perry for it. To ensure that the defendant, Chavez and co-conspirator 1, had a sufficient supply of ketamine to sell to Matthew Perry, defendant would order ketamine from medical distributors and in doing so submit false certifications stating, among other things, that he would not be selling or transferring the ketamine to another doctor. Defendant Chavez would advise co-conspirator 1 how to administer ketamine to victim MP and urge him to sell ketamine to victim MP for profit, including selling the fraudulent VB prescription. Co-conspirator 1 would administer ketamine to victim MP via intramuscular injections and sell vials of ketamine, which he would provide to victim MP for self-administration by another co-conspirator. They would discuss also the adverse reactions that Matthew Perry was having to some of these larger doses. But let's keep doing it anyway. Okay, so now we're to overt acts. So now we kind of have this timeline as well because they list the overt acts in chronological order. So on September 30th, 2023, Dr. Chavez was contacted about purchasing ketamine to sell to Matthew Perry. Then on the same day, Dr. Chavez agreed to sell that ketamine. On September 30th, in text messages, defendant Chavez also told co-conspirator 1 that he had ketamine lozenges available and sent co-conspirator 1 a photograph of the fraudulent VB prescription with VB's name concealed by black marker. On September 30th, 2023, in response to co-conspirator 1 asking, quote, "If I can get you $2,000, would you meet me halfway?" And Dr. Chavez said, yes. Overt act number 5. On September 30th, 2023, this is like the very definition of, you see that line, I never should have crossed it. Like, this is one day and we're to overt act number 5. Decision after decision after decision after decision to do the wrong thing that he could, at best, honestly, lose his license over. At worst, go to jail for a long ass time. Incredible. Anyway, on September 30th, Dr. Chavez met co-conspirator 1 in or around Costa Mesa, California, and transferred at least 4 vials of liquid ketamine, 9 ketamine lozenges, gloves, and syringes. So, on September 30th, co-conspirator 1 traveled to Matthew Perry's residence in Los Angeles County, where he injected Matthew Perry with ketamine and left behind at least 1 vial of ketamine and multiple syringes. On September 30th, co-conspirator 1 sent text messages to defendant Chavez describing the meeting with Matthew Perry, stating it was, quote, like a bad movie. On or about September 30th, co-conspirator 1 paid defendant Dr. Chavez a portion of the money co-conspirator 1 had received from selling ketamine to victim Matthew Perry. On October 2nd, 2023, ahead of a planned meeting with Matthew Perry, and in response to co-conspirator 1 stating, quote, "If today goes well, we may have repeat business," defendant Chavez sent a text message stating, quote, "Let's do everything we can to make it happen." He's talking about repeat business. The way you get repeat business is if you get somebody hopelessly addicted to a substance. This man is nothing more than a drug dealer. On October 2nd, 2023, defendant Chavez told co-conspirator 1, "You should sell him the," and I do not know this word, TROCHES, referring to the ketamine obtained via the fraudulent VB prescription. On October 2nd, 2023, co-conspirator 1 traveled to victim Matthew Perry's residence to inject him with the ketamine and then sell additional ketamine. And these are still from that fraudulent prescription. On October 2nd, co-conspirator 1 provided updates to Dr. Chavez over text message regarding his visit to Matthew Perry's residence, advising that he planned to give Matthew Perry 360 milligrams of ketamine over the span of an hour. On October 2nd, 2023, co-conspirator 1 informed Dr. Chavez he would need additional ketamine to sell to Matthew Perry. On October 2nd, Dr. Chavez attempted to place an order for 10 vials of ketamine from a wholesale distributor of controlled substances for the purpose of obtaining additional ketamine to transfer to co-conspirator 1. On October 2nd, 2023, Defendant Chavez submitted a license authorization form to a different wholesale distributor. So now we're 2 distributors of ketamine, 2 physicians, and he's submitting those on the same day. Among other things, the license authorization form contained false statements, including that the defendant worked for the facility Dreamscape Ketamine, the Health MD, and a certification that the drugs, quote, will be used only by the organization and, quote, will not be sold to a third party, distributed, or used for any other purpose. On October 4th, 2023, co-conspirator 1 traveled to victim Matthew Perry's residence to transfer and sell multiple vials of ketamine. On October 4th, 2023, in text messages, co-conspirator 1 told Dr. Chavez the following, quote, "Any trouble finding more ketamine? In case this continues with this guy, and I think it would be best served not having him look elsewhere and be his go-to." I think co-conspirator 1 is Dr. P. I just want to junk punch all of them. All of them. On October 4th, in response to the text messages described in Overt Act number 18, Dr. Chavez stated he was, quote, working on getting more ketamine. On October 4th, he submitted an order, Dr. Chavez, for 10 vials of ketamine to wholesale ketamine distributor 2, which he was going to use to get to Matthew Perry. On October 4th, in response to an email from wholesale ketamine distributor 1 requesting that defendant Chavez complete a, quote, know your customer DEA questionnaire, defendant Chavez completed the form and submitted it to the distributor, knowing that it contained material false statements, including stating no in response to the question, quote, do you sell any products to other practitioners? On October 6th, 2023, defendant Chavez advised co-conspirator 1 over text message that he had, quote, found a pharmacy that has ketamine and that the co-conspirators could obtain ketamine even sooner than expected. Great news. On October 9th, defendant Chavez received the ketamine shipment from wholesale ketamine distributor 1 and sent a text message to co-conspirator 1 advising, are we still meeting tomorrow? We got the shipment today, 1 box of 10 vials. On October 9th, in response to that text message, the co-conspirator said, quote, great, yes, I'm going to probably come to you midday. So on October 10th, Dr. Chavez met this person in Irvine and transferred 10 vials of ketamine so that they could be sold to Matthew Perry. On October 10th, co-conspirator 1 called Dr. Chavez and informed him that co-conspirator 1 had just injected Matthew Perry with ketamine while Matthew Perry was in the backseat of a vehicle parked in a public parking lot in Long Beach, California. And I'm almost positive that co-conspirator 1 is Dr. P, because I've watched a lot of videos on this and read a lot of articles and read through a lot of stuff. And I'm pretty sure it was Dr. P that injected him in the back of the vehicle, which we'll get to Dr. P's indictment as well. But obviously that is 100% not okay. You could say that, oh, I'm a doctor and I'm the one that injected him, but you're not monitoring him. You're meeting him in a parking lot. You're injecting him in the backseat of the car and then you're leaving. You know that you're supposed to do this in a facility with proper stuff. It's just ridiculous. On October 12th, 2023, co-conspirator 1 administered a large dose of ketamine to Matthew Perry, which caused an adverse medical reaction, including a significant spike to Matthew Perry's blood pressure, causing him to freeze up so that he could not speak or move. October 13th, 2023, in response to text messages from co-conspirator 1 asking if he would be interested in running a ketamine clinic with co-conspirator 1, Dr. Chavez said, quote, interesting, and quote, as long as we are doing things on the up and up, we can start ASAP. All done legally without any shady stuff. Having them come to the clinic will ensure this. Dr. Chavez says that, as long as it's done legally and on the up and up. So Dr. P says, oh, you don't agree with the method I'm currently doing? And Dr. Chavez said, quote, it's not what I think, it's what an entity like California Medical Board would view it, or the DEA. And forwarded Dr. P a screenshot of an October 12th email that Dr. Chavez had received notifying him that he was under investigation by the California Board of Medicine. That's October 12th. On October 19th, 2023, when he was interviewed by investigators from the DEA and Medical Board of California about the ketamine lozenges prescribed in patient VB's name, missing from defendant Chavez's former ketamine clinic, defendant Chavez concealed from investigators the fact that he had transferred ketamine to co-conspirator 1 to sell to Matthew Perry, and instead claimed that he'd thrown those lozenges away because they'd melted in his car. There has to be a chain of custody of these things. You have to keep records of this kind of stuff. Last overt act, number 31. On or after October 28, 2023, after learning about victim Matthew Perry's death, Dr. Chavez called co-conspirator 1 to discuss whether co-conspirator 1 was concerned that the ketamine they distributed to Matthew Perry may have possibly been the cause of his death. I don't know, Dr. Chavez. What do you think? Of fucking course it was. Like, you think that could have something to do with it? Oh gosh, I don't know. What? Okay, so now we're to the indictment of Ketamine Queen and Dr. P. Interestingly, in Ketamine Queen's indictment, she's also now on the hook for another victim. They refer to him as victim CM. On August 26, 2019, she had sold ketamine to this person who died of a drug overdose within a day of the drug deal. As a result, a family member of CM informed her of the death in a text message stating, quote, "The ketamine you sold my brother killed him. It's listed as the cause of death." Within days of receiving this text, Ketamine Queen confirmed that ketamine can kill by conducting a Google search for, quote, "Can ketamine be listed as a cause of death?" So that's pretty interesting there. So we are going to get to the object of the conspiracy. So basically, Matthew Perry's live-in assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa, would communicate with the other co-conspirators, including Dr. P, Eric Fleming, about purchasing ketamine to distribute. These co-conspirators would use encrypted messaging applications and coded language to discuss drug deals, including referring to bottles of ketamine as Dr. Pepper, cans, and bots. After discussing ketamine orders with Kenneth Iwamasa, Eric Fleming and Dr. P would communicate with their ketamine sources of supply, including Ketamine Queen and Dr. Chavez, about inventory price, availability, all that kind of stuff. So, Ketamine Queen would operate and maintain the Sangha Stash House in North Hollywood, California, where she would store, package, and distribute narcotics, including providing ketamine to Eric Fleming so that he could sell it to Matthew Perry. And then Matthew Perry's assistant would meet with them, buy it, inject it. Dr. P would distribute ketamine to the assistant and Matthew Perry outside the usual course of professional practice and without a legitimate medical purpose, including by teaching co-conspirator Iwamasa how to inject Matthew Perry with ketamine, and obviously not properly monitoring him and things like that. Let's get to some of these overt acts. So we know that on September 30th, that is when the search for the ketamine started, because prior to this point, Matthew Perry was receiving ketamine treatment for, I believe, quite a while in a medical facility. He would go there, he would get much, much lower doses than what was happening here. And it was part of an actual medical treatment. From what I understand, he obviously became addicted and started to ask for more, and the doctors that were giving him treatment would not give him more. So then he started looking at doctors who would sell it to him or who would inject him with higher doses and things like that. And unfortunately, he came across two doctors who were all too eager to do that. So you're going to hear something that is going to make your blood boil and make you want to throw everything out the window, including your own self. And then you're going to go back inside and you're going to throw yourself out the window again because this is infuriating. On September 30th, 2023, in text messages with Dr. Chavez, Dr. P discussed how much to charge Matthew Perry for ketamine, stating, quote, "I wonder how much this moron will pay, and let's find out." That is no regard for human life. You know how dangerous this is. You know how dangerous this is. Let's see how much this moron's going to pay. Great. So Dr. Chavez that same day, as we know, said, sure, I will sell it to you. Then sent the photograph of the ketamine lozenges, which the photograph is here if you're watching this on YouTube. It does say right there on the package, avoid hot car storage because it can melt. So he paid attention there. I mean, I guess he knows how they work too. I didn't even know this was a thing. On September 30th, 2023, in text messages, Dr. Chavez and Dr. P arranged to meet in Costa Mesa so that he could transfer the liquid ketamine. So they have this highlight, like underlined, bold, all the things. Defendant Placentia leaves ketamine with co-conspirator Iwamasa and teaches co-conspirator Iwamasa how to inject ketamine. So this is the first day, September 30th. He's like, I'm going to leave you with all of this extra ketamine, okay? So you can administer it yourself. I don't want to have to drive to meet you every time you want some ketamine. Because I know it's going to be multiple times a day because I know this is getting way the fuck out of hand. Certainly very dangerous, but I don't have time to deal with it, okay? So I'm going to leave all of this stuff with you. Quote, I will give you your first dose if you would like, and then leave supplies with you. Fantastic. And then he teaches Kenneth how to inject the ketamine and left the ketamine and the syringes so that the assistant can inject him. Somebody with no medical history, practice, knowledge, training, any of that. You inject him. Can you teach anybody how to give a shot? Sure. Does that person know what they're looking for after? Do they know what to do if something happens? No. On September 30th, Matthew Perry's assistant paid Dr. P approximately $4,500 in cash for that ketamine. On September 30th, Dr. P sent text messages to Dr. Chavez describing that meeting, calling it like a bad movie. And then he's like, okay, I'll pay you. Now we've got another bold and underline. In early October 2023, Dr. P sells additional ketamine to Matthew Perry's assistant. So the assistant, Iwamasa, is texting Dr. P saying they want more vials of ketamine and not just injection sessions. So I think initially it was they were paying for Dr. P to inject. And then that first day, he's like, well, I can just leave it for you if you want. So at that point, they say, let's forget the meeting for you to inject. Just sell me the vials. Okay. So he texted, quote, want to end up with 8 bottles of Dr. Pepper, not just 8 sessions. On October 2nd, in response to that text message, Dr. P says, quote, understood. On October 2nd, ahead of a planned meeting, Dr. P told Dr. Chavez, if today goes well, we'll have repeat business. And then we know some of this is repeat from the other indictments because some of it is communication between Dr. Chavez and then, these people. So we know that Dr. Chavez continued to provide this to Dr. P. And we get to where Dr. Chavez is placing these orders with the other distributors, trying to get more ketamine. On October 4th, in text messages using coded language, Kenneth Iwamasa told defendant Dr. P he needed to purchase additional bottles of ketamine, stating, quote, I will need to get more cans of Dr. Pepper from you today. I can come to you to make it convenient. On October 4th, 2023, Kenneth Iwamasa said to Dr. P that he had successfully injected Matthew Perry with ketamine, noting, quote, found the sweet spot, but trying different places led to running out of ketamine. And as a physician, you don't hear that and say, You just kept injecting different spots. How much ketamine? I mean, I don't know if it's one of those situations where if it doesn't go in the muscle, it's still in your system, right? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. That's concerning no matter what. On October 4th, in response to that text, Dr. P said, quote, I have ideas on how to get consistent results. Same day, in response to Iwamasa's text messages requesting to purchase ketamine, quote, now, Dr. P stated he was, quote, currently retrieving 4 bottles from his source, referring to Dr. Chavez. That same day, Dr. P travels to Irvine, California to purchase 8 vials of liquid ketamine from Dr. Chavez. And then that same day, Dr. P injects Matthew Perry with ketamine and then sold multiple vials of that ketamine to his assistant. On October 4th, in text messages to co-conspirator Chavez, defendant Dr. P asked whether Chavez was having, quote, any trouble finding more ketamine. And remember, that's when he said, we want to be his go-to. I want to make sure you're able to find it. I don't want him to have to look elsewhere. And that's when Dr. Chavez starts placing orders with the other wholesale ketamine place 2 distributor. And on October 6, 2023, in response to Kenneth Iwamasa advising Dr. P that he needed more ketamine because he only had, quote, 1 left, Dr. P traveled to Matthew Perry's residence and sold 1 or more vials of ketamine to Kenneth in exchange for cash. Again, bold, underlined, defendant Dr. P sells ketamine to co-conspirator Iwamasa at 12:30 a.m. on a public street in Santa Monica, California. On October 7th, the assistant sends text messages to Dr. P asking for more ketamine and asking if he could pay with something besides cash because, quote, it's hard to get to the bank on the fly with all that's going on, which happens so fast now. On October 7th at approximately 11:29 p.m. and in response to text messages from the assistant, Dr. P confirmed that he did have 2 bottles of ketamine to sell and agreed to meet in Santa Monica, saying, I'm at 3rd Street Promenade now if you want to meet now. So the assistant tells Dr. P that he sent, quote, $3,000 by electronic payment, and I'm bringing 3 more leaving now. On October 8th, at approximately 12:30 a.m., they meet and he sells more ketamine in exchange for $6,000 in cash. On October 9th, 2023, after Dr. Chavez received a ketamine delivery from that first distributor, he sends a text message to Dr. P, saying, are we still on tomorrow? I have those 10 vials. And that's when Dr. P says, yeah, I'll come to you midday. Another bold underline, defendant Placencia injects victim MP with ketamine in a parking lot in Long Beach. So this is the Long Beach. On October 10th, Dr. P travels to Irvine. He buys the 10 vials of ketamine to sell to Matthew Perry. That's when they meet in Long Beach. He injects Matthew Perry and he's going to sell them more in exchange for cash. On October 12th, 2023, in text messages, the assistant asked to purchase more ketamine and noted that he would pay Dr. P the money he owed for ketamine that he had already provided. So on October 12th, 2023, Dr. P travels to Matthew Perry's residence in LA County to sell additional ketamine, for which his assistant paid Dr. P approximately $21,500 in cash. And there's a picture of like a wad of hundreds and a notebook on a desk with a pen and apparently scissors. On October 12th, 2023, after Dr. P injected Matthew Perry with a large dose of ketamine that caused Matthew Perry to freeze up and his blood pressure to significantly spike, Dr. P told his assistant something to the effect of, quote, let's not do that again, and nonetheless left additional vials of ketamine with his assistant to continue to inject him with when we've already had a major adverse reaction. On October 13th, in response to text messages from Dr. P asking if Dr. Chavez would be interested in running that ketamine clinic, remember he says, Dr. Chavez is like, well, actually, we probably need to have him come to the clinic and needs to be on the up and up because that's something I fucking care about now. And so that's when Dr. P was like, oh, you don't? you don't like the way I'm doing it? And he's like, well, it's not me. It's that pesky medical board and DEA. On October 24th, 2023, despite less than a week earlier telling a patient at his clinic that Matthew Perry was, quote, too far gone and spiraling in his addiction, Dr. P placed an order for 10 vials of ketamine from wholesale ketamine distributor 1 so that Dr. P could offer to sell the ketamine to Matthew Perry. On October 27th, 2023, in text messages, Dr. P offered to sell additional ketamine to Matthew Perry's assistant, stating, quote, I know you mentioned taking a break. I've been stocking up in the meanwhile. I'm not sure when you guys plan to resume, but in case it's when I'm out of town this weekend, I have left supplies with a nurse of mine. I can always let her know the plan. I will be back in town Tuesday. So then Ketamine Queen and Eric Fleming start selling the ketamine to Matthew Perry and his assistant. So now we're getting to Ketamine Queen stuff. Eric Fleming is trying to sell the ketamine to Matthew Perry's assistant. And so his assistant texted Eric Fleming, how much do you want per bottle? And what is the nice tip you want? That's October 10th, 2023. So Eric Fleming is like, perfect, I'll bring it to you. I'm getting the price now. I need some upfront to pay when I pick up, the rest when I deliver. They were using the Signal encrypted messaging application. Eric Fleming was communicating with Ketamine Queen about obtaining the ketamine. He says, hi, Jazz, it's Eric. Let me know your Addy. Does that bring back some memories or what? I don't think anybody says that anymore. How many vials do you have availability? So they are now going back and forth about what she has, how much, all of this. So Eric says he could obtain vials of ketamine for $300, sent a photograph of the ketamine he proposed selling, and requested a $1,000 brokering fee. So then Ketamine Queen tells Eric Fleming that her ketamine is high quality and offered a sample of the drug for Matthew Perry to try, stating, it's unmarked, but it's amazing. He'd take one and try it. I have more if he likes. Then on October 11th, Fleming sent a screenshot of Ketamine Queen's message stating, I just got this from my person. She only deals with high-end and celebs. If it were not great stuff, she'd lose her business. On October 12th, 2023, Eric Fleming contacted Ketamine Queen to obtain that sample vial of ketamine and advised Ketamine Queen that it was intended for Matthew Perry. So after communicating with the Ketamine Queen about her supply, Eric Fleming tells Matthew Perry's assistant that his, quote, hookup was able to get the kind that is used for intramuscular. I guarantee it's going to be amazing, and sent a photograph of unlabeled, unmarked clear glass vials of ketamine to show Kenneth what they look like. On October 12th, 2023, Eric Fleming told Matthew Perry's assistant he was willing to facilitate the drug deal, but he needed to make money, saying, quote, I wouldn't do it if there wasn't a chance of me making some money for doing this. On October 13th, Eric Fleming goes to the stash house that the Ketamine Queen has in North Hollywood and purchased that ketamine sample, which was contained inside an unlabeled, unmarked clear glass vial with a blue cap. On October 13th, 2023, co-conspirator Fleming drove to Matthew Perry's residence and delivered that sample vial, knowing that his assistant would be the one injecting. They sell Ketamine Queen via Eric Fleming 25 vials of ketamine on October 14th, 2023. These are in addition to the vials that Dr. P and Dr. Chavez are providing as well. On October 13th, Eric Fleming says to Matthew Perry's assistant, I can get as much as you want. Quote, let me know how many and I'll confirm what she can get. But as of now, she said she can fill any order. So on October 13th, Matthew Perry's assistant says he would purchase 25 vials, 5,500 at $220 plus 500 for you for logistics. On October 14th, Eric Fleming drives to Matthew Perry's residence and collects cash from his assistant. And then he buys the 25 vials of ketamine. Then he drives back to Matthew Perry's residence and delivers that to his assistant. On October 23rd, Matthew Perry's assistant texts Eric Fleming requesting to purchase more, saying, can we do same as last time over next 2 days? On October 23rd, Eric Fleming says yes, that he can do that. He says it will be the same product. You want same amount? Put the $5,500 together ASAP and I'll come get it as soon as possible and get it all done tonight. On October 23rd, Eric Fleming goes to Matthew Perry's residence, picks up $6,000 in cash to bring to Ketamine Queen for this. So this is when they sell the ketamine that the assistant uses to inject Matthew Perry, which kills him. So on October 24th, 2023, based on information from defendant Ketamine Queen, Eric Fleming sends text messages to the assistant about the delivery and timeline of the ketamine, or timing, including stating that her ketamine source, which she referred to as the master chef and scientist, would make the supply available and that the ketamine was on its way to our girl, referring to Ketamine Queen. So he purchases 25 vials. As part of the transaction, Ketamine Queen included ketamine lollipops as an add-on for Matthew Perry's large ketamine order. I didn't know you could get like bonuses with that. On October 24th, then Eric goes to Matthew Perry's house and sells the ketamine. On October 24th, Matthew Perry's assistant administered at least 6 shots of ketamine to Matthew Perry. On October 25th, Ketamine Queen reached out to Eric Fleming about anticipated future transfers, stating, please let me know if you think there will be another round because the scientist, he'll be gone as well. I'll have to know ahead of time to get that sorted out before we leave. On October 25th, Matthew Perry receives at least another 6 injections of ketamine. Same on 26th, same on 27th. And then on October 28th, using syringes provided by Dr. P, Matthew Perry's assistant injects MP Matthew Perry with at least 3 shots of the ketamine that he got from Fleming and Ketamine Queen, which resulted in the death and serious bodily injury of Matthew Perry. Then, Ketamine Queen directs Eric Fleming to delete evidence after learning about his death. On October 28th, after she learned about his death from news reports, Ketamine Queen called Eric Fleming using the Signal application to discuss the co-conspirators distancing themselves from selling ketamine to Matthew Perry by, among other things, deleting digital evidence on their cell phones. So she sends a message and says, delete all our messages. And he says yes. And she also sets disappearing message time to 1 hour. He must have screenshot this, though, because we have it. It's right here in the indictment. Then Eric Fleming sends a text message to Ketamine Queen saying, please call, got more info, want to bounce ideas off you. I'm 90% sure everyone is protected. I've never dealt with Matthew Perry, only his assistant. So the assistant was the enabler. Also, they are doing a 3-month tox screening. Does ketamine stay in your system or is it immediately flushed out? And then we go into more information about Ketamine Queen, and they kind of talk about her stash house, the fact that she had distributed that substance that she knew killed somebody previously and continued to do it. And obviously a lot of this is repeat because we've kind of heard most of it in the other indictments. So, and then, there is an indictment for Matthew Perry's, that's the end of that one. There is an indictment for Matthew Perry's assistant as well. And then one more for, Eric Fleming has his own indictment. I don't necessarily think we need to go through all of these individually because there is so much that is repeat because we're hearing a lot of we know that the assistant was injecting him. This is somebody who, again, was very well aware of his issues with sobriety and addiction and all of those things. He's making sure to get the cash out. He's texting, he's making sure that he's setting all of these things in motion. there's really not much in this indictment, I think, that is any different than what we've read. And I'm not sure with the Dr. P saying, hey, I know you guys said you wanted to take a break, but like, if you want to just keep doing it, you can buy more because I'm stocking up. I don't know what the taking a break was. I don't know if they were saying we're going to take a break from these people because they're much more expensive. I read somewhere that like the amount, because remember, these doctors are getting it from a wholesale distributor. They're paying like $20 a vial, either $20 or $200. Either way, what they're charging like thousands of dollars per vial is astronomical. They just saw this human being as a payday. And that's all there is to it. And it's really sad. And I know that there are plenty of people out there. I've seen the comments. Matthew Perry knew what he was doing. It was dangerous, all this stuff. I would caution anybody who wants to say something as vile as he got what was coming to him or anything like that. I would caution you against saying anything like that. If you've never been through addiction, it changes your brain. It changes your physiology. You become physically dependent on it, or you are sick. No person starts out thinking, I'd love to be addicted to this and I hope I fucking die from it. I hope it ruins my life. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. These things are made in a way that they can completely hijack our brains. And if you've ever said, like, struggled with weight and like, I know I shouldn't eat this. I know I shouldn't eat this. I know I shouldn't eat this, but I really want it. Then shut up. Then shut up. We don't all have perfect discipline and we don't all have perfect brain chemistry, especially once other things, happen. So I don't want to hear any of that. I don't want to see any of that. I simply will not tolerate it. You can have your own opinions. That's fine, but it's not going to be here. Like those kind of things are not going to be here. And I'm just going to not have it. I just simply won't have it. It's really a sad thing, especially that these doctors, if anybody knows, they know. Drug dealers know too. They just don't care. And I don't expect them to. But I certainly expect a physician to care. And the physicians who were initially doing his ketamine treatment are not charged here. And that's because they were doing things the right way. And they were not getting him more when he asked for more. They kept him where he was. And again, I don't know anything like chemically about ketamine or anything like that. Obviously, there are doctors who are using it and feel that it is medically necessary in some cases. So that's not really what this case is about, but it is the exploiting a person who is in a vulnerable state for money. And the text message saying, I wonder how much this moron will pay. That's just horrific. So that's where we are right now. That's what we know. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. And we'll see you on the next episode. If you like this episode, be sure to like this episode and follow the show so that you never miss out on new episodes. Get in on the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us at Killer Queens Pod, or you can join our Facebook discussion group at Killer Queens Podcast, where we discuss cases covered on the show and all things 90s. If you want to submit a case to be covered on the show, visit killerqueenspodcast.com/case submission and just complete the form. And if we cover the case, we'll give you a shout out on the show. Lilas.